not believers. I enjoy the fact that through a time like Passion Week, we get a chance to exercise our faith, if you will, to declare the convictions that really influence and hopefully direct our lives day in and day out, to proclaim the assurance that we have, basically just to, as the Bible says, put our faith on display. I hope the conviction of things hoped for, the assurance of things, that kind of thing not seen. And I guess weeks like that for me tend to make me a little bit more aware than I sometimes normally am. Just the vastness of God. Just when you think about all the things that He's done, and the greatest, that pearl of greatest price, if you will, that we give up everything for. And in that sense, I think serving Him comes along that way. And that's where I want to thank you, because obviously you have to give up a lot. You have to give up your time, whether it's coming to rehearsal, whether it's coming to learn music, or practicing your car, whether it's turning away from things that perhaps you would rather do just so that you can be at a special rehearsal, or all those kinds of things. So I just want to say thank you for being diligent to be a part of that. And that kind of came to mind as I was listening to a sermon that John Piper gave, if you know that name, on Acts 26. And it was regard to Jesus' words to Paul on the road to Emmaus, when he kind of smacks him on the head and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" Right? You remember that. And here's what Jesus said to Paul: "Rise and stand upon your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as a servant and witness to the things in which you have seen me, and to those in which I will appear to you, delivering you from your people, from the Gentiles, to whom I am sending you, to open their eyes, so that they may turn from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me." And I love those words. And they're not just, I believe, Jesus talking to Paul, because if you go into 1 Peter in particular, and Peter says the same similar thing, that we're this chosen race, we are this holy priesthood, and our job is to proclaim the excellencies of Him who called us out of darkness into His marvelous light. So we kind of see the same call. It's easy sometimes to say, well, yeah, he said that to Paul, but that's for Paul. And I think it's for all of us in that sense. But Piper points out a distinction, which I guess sometimes I think we forget. And that is when he speaks about opening spiritual eyes, or turning someone from darkness to light, delivering someone from the power of Satan, receiving forgiveness of sin, and granting a place among the sanctified, none of those things are something you and I can do. And sometimes we forget that. What we're called to do is be the proclaimers. But only God can show you the darkness of your life. Only God can turn that darkness to light, right? Because we weren't even aware how sinful we are before God turned on that light bulb. And sometimes He continues to turn that light, shine that flashlight into some of those corners of our hearts that we kind of go, oh yeah. And what we were more aware of is the light that Satan wants us to believe is truth, because he masquerades as an angel of light, hasn't he? And that kind of light, I think, blinds us to those areas of pridefulness, of self-centeredness, our jealousies, our anger, our malice toward other people, our lusts, all of that stuff, which somehow, in the light of Satan, we justify in our minds. It's okay to be that angry. It's okay to not think that person is worth it. It's okay if I have that 5th piece of cake. I haven't been feeling good. It's that kind of thing that could, I shouldn't have said that on birthday night. But noticing the very fact that what happens when God gets a hold of your life is that all of a sudden, those things you start to see, oh, that's darkness, that's not light. So Satan has an amazing power in this world. God has a greater power. We can't forgive sin, nor can we put anybody in the family of God. See, God does all of that stuff. And one of the things that, when I come off of Easter week, I begin to see, and I hope you do too, the miracles that God has worked in your life to bring you to this place. Every one of you is a miracle. Because none of us can do the very things that Paul was told to do by Jesus. I'm sending you to open their eyes. Well, we can't do that. But we can proclaim. And that's why I believe, we have talked about in sharing our faith with people, that it's so important for you just to tell your story. So important for you to let people know, here's when the light came on in my head. Because before that time, I thought this was light. Now I see that it's not. And that's huge for people, because that's something that really happened to you. No matter what it is. You might have grown up in a Christian home, you had a halo over your head your whole life. Right? But there was a point. There was a point. Yeah. For me, it was more like that, where I had my hands around my throat most of the time. But it's so important that we tell that, because we had our eyes opened, right? We were made aware that there's a source of evil that's far more insidious and dangerous in this world than any of us can give him power, give him credit for, and that's Satan. He's a real enemy. He's a real enemy. But none of us can, all of us are forgiven. Every one of us have had our record of wrong completely wiped out. That's a miracle. Think about the things you've done in your life. Think about the things you've thought in your life. Think about the things you regret having not done, that you kind of sense you should have done. All that stuff, God just said, gone. And his arms continue to be open and saying, welcome to the family. Welcome to the family. Right? I mean, that's an amazing, miraculous thing. And I share that with you because I think we need to see it more. I think we need to meditate more. And this is the very thing that Piper is so good. If you've never listened to him preach, listen to him. We just need to savor more the miracle that God has done in all of our lives. And when we do that, it creates this real sense of humility, this real sense of wonder, this real sense of awe, all of that kind of stuff. If it doesn't move you when you think about it, if it doesn't astound you that God would do all those things for you, if it doesn't humble you, if it doesn't give you a great joy, then I really want to encourage you to look very carefully and examine your heart, because if it doesn't do those things to you, you may not be saved. And I would hate to think any of you are in that place. But you never really know until you really take the time. And I hope and pray that you will take the time. And for me, I really sense that. I've read, and we're going to be singing the anthem, Jesus Saves. And what came to mind was this passage in John 3, which is when David's going to be preaching this. The followers of John the Baptist are talking to him. And John answers them and says, a person cannot receive even one thing unless it's given him from heaven. You yourselves bear me witness that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have been sent before him. The one who has the bride is the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. That's the very thing I'm talking about. That when we really see and hear what God has done and is going to do, as Jesus told Paul, it's astounding. But as he says here, we rejoice in it. Therefore, this joy of mine is now complete. He must increase, but I must decrease. He who comes from above is above all. He who is of the earth belongs to the earth, speaks in earthly ways. He who comes from heaven is above all. And he bears witness to what he has seen and heard, yet no one receives his testimony. For he whom God has sent utters the words of God, for he gives the Spirit without measure. The Father loves the Son and has given all things into his hand. I mean, those are great words for us to savor, and I hope that we can. And I hope that we can do that even as we look at the first line of Jesus Saves, which is one of the pieces you should have picked up tonight.
Yeah.
But hear it. Freedom's calling. Chains are falling. Hope is dawning bright and true. Day is breaking. Night is quaking. God is making all things new. That's the very thing that we're talking about here, folks. And I hope that that's something you can cherish in your own life and remember in your own life and be able to tell people that in coming to Christ you were given a tremendous freedom. The chains of sin fell off of you. You had a new hope that was bright and can't be taken away. That light begins to continue to grow in your life. Night continues to quake. That's the idea of Satan, right? I mean, think about it. This incredible, insidious, evil force that if you just turn from him, right, he will flee. Resist and he will flee. I mean, that's said very simply, and yet that's what we're called to do. God is making all things new. So as he makes us all new, I hope that we can continue to work toward just savoring a little bit more, meditating a little bit more. And I hope the week was like that. How did you feel about, or how did your family feel about what you did in Good Friday and Easter morning? Anybody? Okay, apparently they didn't like it. So I really did receive quite a number of really good comments from people, and you know, words that they don't normally use, just breathtaking, that kind of word, which I think is interesting to me. But I really felt that what we hope to achieve, and the very fact that God gives us this great privilege to be able to proclaim what we have seen him do and what we believe he will do. Those are great things. But before we, yeah, go ahead, John.